Across deserts, mountains, jungles and ice fields, there are giant symbols that are carved into the earth. So massive you'd never know they were there unless you were looking from above. Perfectly shaped animals, spirals, crosses and mysterious patterns. But who made them and why? Well, today we're gonna find out. Join me as we explore 15 amazing geoglyphs that were carved into the planet. Let's start with No. 12, Australia's giant mystery. Etched in sand, the Murray Man. In the heart of Australia's outback, etched into the earth near the remote town of Moree, lies one of the most bizarre and enormous geoglyphs ever discovered, the Murray Man, standing over 4 kilometers tall. This massive figure depicts a muscular man wielding a spear or a stick, his form carved with precision into the plateau known as Finnis Springs. And yet, for all the size, the Murray Man was unknown to the world until 1998, when it was first spotted not by explorers or locals, but by a pilot flying overhead. Even more strangely, no one has ever come forward to claim its creation. Now, geoglyphs aren't uncommon in human history, from the Nazca lines in Peru to chalk figures in England, but the Murray Man is in a league of its own, both in terms of size and its mystery. Experts estimate the lines were originally dug up to 35 centimeters creating these wide grooves in the dry crust. The outline was so clear that it could be seen from planes flying thousands of feet up, yet on foot the terrain and the scale of the figure made it nearly impossible to see over time. The geoglyph began to fade. Wind-shifting sands and seasonal rains slowly eroded the sharp edges of the grooves. By the early to it was nearly invisible from above. But in a strange twist, a restoration project was undertaken, not by the government, but by anonymous volunteers. Using GPS data and satellite photos from the figure's original state, they traced the outline with precision grading equipment, reviving the Murray Man from aerial obscurity. From above, his spear-wielding form sprawls across the desert. The human eye struggles to process the size. It covers an area larger than Manhattan. Satellite imaging has allowed analysts to detect alignment anomalies and even possible tool marks, suggesting a deliberate and technologically informed creation. Just this blown colossal figure, etched into the wilderness, is like a long, forgotten god that looks skyward. No. 11. The Atacama Desert. So high up in the Atacama Desert of northern Chile, that's one of the driest, most lifeless places on Earth, stands a figure so large that it can only be fully appreciated from the sky, carved into the slope of Cerro Unitas, a barren hillside surrounded by salt flats. The Atacama giant stretches nearly 400 feet tall. Believed to have been created between the year 1014 and by the Tiwanaku, or later Inca cultures, the Atacama giant remains a source of speculation. What's most fascinating is that this geoglyph is not just an artistic representation. It's believed to have functioned as a giant astronomical calendar. Researchers have noted that the elaborate headgear may represent solar or lunar cycles, with the angles of its limbs and extensions that may point to seasonal constellations or harvest timings. From this perspective, the Atacama giant wasn't an artwork. It was simply a sky mapping instrument rendered on a planetary scale. But the figure's visual features have sparked some other theories. The square, almost robotic form, the spiked head, and the alien posture have led fringe researchers and UFO enthusiasts to speculate that the Atacama giant represents a being from another world. While mainstream archaeology dismisses such claims, the myth surrounding the giant continues to grow, particularly with the advent of satellite imagery. From above, it is a striking contrast of dark lines against the pale desert. The symmetry is kind of mesmerizing. A humanoid shape perfectly aligned along the slope, with proportions that seem almost mathematical in their spacing on satellite overlays. The figure looks like an ancient glyph that was etched into the surface of the planet, as if it were a message not to passing travelers, but to something flying far overhead, maybe watching from the stars. No. 10. The Uffington White Horse. Etched into the rolling chalk hills of Oxfordshire, England, is a figure so bold that it looks like a minimalist logo designed in modern times. Yet it's been galloping across the hillside for over 3,000 years, known as the Uffington White Horse. This geoglyph spans about 110 meters, 360 feet from nose to tail, and it's carved in sharp angular strokes, It is the oldest surviving chalk figure in Britain, and unlike anything else found across the ancient world. Now, what makes it truly fascinating is how advanced and deliberate the design is. Most other hill figures in Britain, like the Siren Abbas giant or the Long Man of Wilmington, are proportionally simple and best viewed from ground level. But the Effington horse is a bit different. Only when viewed from the air does it snap into clarity, revealing a form so clean it almost resembles a glyph from a futuristic language. Archaeologists have dated the figure back to the Bronze Age, around 1000 BC, based on soil analysis and sediment buildup. Over the centuries, the carving has been regularly scoured, with a process where locals gather to re-chalk and clean the figure preserve in its shape against erosion. Without that intervention, it would have faded into the hillside generations ago. But who created it and why? That remains the subject of a fierce debate. Some believe the figure is linked to the worship of Epona, a Celtic horse goddess associated with fertility, warfare and travel. Others connected to solar mythology. The horse as a symbol of the sun chariot, racing across the sky even now. It holds spiritual weight. On solstices and equinoxes, small groups still gather there to meditate, light candles, or simply watch the sky. The land around it is protected by the National Trust, and the scouring ceremonies once community rituals continue in quieter, more conservation-focused ways. The horse hasn't moved in 3 millennia, but it still runs across calendars, across fields and across our human imagination. From above it looks like a piece of abstract art that was carved into a green canvas. The shape looks unnatural against the landscape, like a signal almost, from a civilization trying to communicate across time. Unlike modern human markings, which are rigid and gridded, the horse flows with the land, a dynamic, timeless glyph meant not for people on foot, but for eyes watching from above. Node 9. The Sahama Lines. In the highlands of western Bolivia, near Mount Sahama, lies a geoglyph wonder, so big and sprawling that it went unnoticed for centuries, not because it was small or hidden, but because it was too massive to be seen from the ground, known as the Sahama Lines. This ancient network of straight paths carved into the earth covers an area of over 8,700 square miles, making it one of the largest and least understood geoglyph systems on Earth. The lines are remarkably straight, so straight in fact they defy the terrain, snaking perfectly through hills, valleys and plateaus without any deviation. They were created by scraping away the top layer of dark volcanic soil to reveal the lighter sediment beneath, and unlike Peru's Nazca lines, which form animal figures and geometric patterns, the Sahama lines are almost entirely linear, like a colossal spider web of runways, with no obvious beginning or end. But despite the scale, the lines remained largely unknown to modern researchers until the late 20th century, when satellite imagery and aerial surveys revealed the full scope. But why were they made? Well, archaeologists believe the Sahama lines were created by Inca civilizations, possibly by the Aymara people. Over a period of 1,000 years, many of the lines appear to converge on ancient shrines, burial towers and natural landmarks, suggesting a spiritual map that's drawn across the earth. The Bolivian government has only recently begun to promote the Sahama lines as a cultural heritage site, yet access remains limited. Few tourists visit, and even fewer are aware of its existence. Truly see the lines, you have to use drone footage, high-altitude flight, or satellite imaging, making them a true mystery, designed intentionally or not for the eyes and the sky. From above, it's an endless lattice of white filaments, crisscrossing the red-brown desert, stretching to the horizon. They look like the etchings of a giant's compass, or an untranslatable diagram of vanished science. The Sahama lines remain one of the only geoglyphic features visible without magnification, their clarity and scale turning the Bolivian desert into an open-air blueprint for something lost. No. 8. The Blythe in Taglios, California. In the desert north of Blythe, California, just a few miles from the Colorado River and near the border with Arizona, a set of massive, humanoid figures silently dominate the land. Known as the Blight in Taglios, these geoglyphs were carved into the desert floor centuries ago by Native American cultures and remained entirely unknown to the modern world until 1932, when they were spotted by a pilot flying overhead. They span about 170 feet in length, and they're among the largest and most mysterious ones in North America, and they can only be truly appreciated from above. They consist of 6 distinct figures, 3 humanoid forms to 4-legged animals, likely mountain lions or coyotes, and a coiled circle that may represent a snake, or a solar symbol. These shapes were created by scraping away the surface gravel to expose the lighter colored soil underneath, forming sharp contrast visible from the air. The scale of these glyphs makes them nearly invisible from the ground. In fact, early European settlers and explorers walked past without even noticing. It wasn't until aircraft came into being that the sheer magnitude of them became apparent. But despite the cultural importance, the Blythe ontologers were nearly destroyed by modern developments. In the early 20th century, off-road vehicles and cattle grazing began damaging these fragile outlines. Thankfully though, after their discovery from the air present, revival efforts kicked in today. The figures are surrounded by and designated as a California historic landmark. Still questions remain. Why were these figures placed in such an uninhabited region? Were they meant to be seen by spirits in the sky? Or were they territorial markers, ceremonial sites, or tools for ritual storytelling? No one knows for sure, but standing beside the dusty fence that now protects it's hard not to feel that you're standing in the presence of something much older, deeper, and far more deliberate than it first appears. From above you can see the ghostly outline, scratched into the brown and gold of the Mojave Desert. Satellite imagery captures the full scope in a way that ground-based photography cannot. Each limb, each curve, each ancient line, as if etched by an invisible giant with a cosmic pen. The figures stand out even more dramatically, revealing how precisely aligned and preserved they are, even after centuries of sun, wind, and erosion. No. 7. The Nazca spider and monkey in Peru. Number list of massive geoglyphs would be complete without the iconic Nazca lines of southern Peru. And among the hundreds of shapes scattered across this arid plateau, the spider and monkey stand out as two of the most famous. These glyphs were etched into the desert between 500 BCE and 500 CE, and they stretch for hundreds of feet, only visible in their entirety from above. Now the Nazca spider is roughly 150 feet with delicate, spindly legs that demonstrate astonishing precision. Scholars believe it may represent specific species of spider known for its fertility symbolism in its pre-Columbian culture. What makes it especially intriguing is the theory that it may function as an astronomical map. Some researchers have proposed that the spider's legs align with star constellations or track the movement of certain celestial bodies during key agricultural periods. Just a short distance away is the Nazca monkey, measuring over 300 feet long with an unmistakable curled tail and stylized hands. The monkey was possibly associated with water or rain, key concerns for civilizations living in one of the driest places on the planet. Their meaning, however, remains an open question. Some theories point to religious pilgrimage routes, with the lines acting as paths to sacred places. Others proposed they were astronomical observatories or ceremonial zones meant to be seen by the sky gods. More fringe interpretations suggested the geoglyphs are messages to extraterrestrial beings, citing the figures' massive size and visibility only from high altitudes but from above. The spider and monkey appear like perfectly preserved etchings across a vast beige canvas. Satellite imagery reveals the symmetry, spacing, and precision that's nearly impossible to appreciate from the ground. These figures, locked in place for centuries, seem to whisper to passing satellites, "Hey, we're here. We watched the skies and we left something behind." No. 6. The Amazon geoglyphs. Hidden by the thick canopy of the Amazon rainforest lie the faint scar of a forgotten world. Massive geometric patterns carved into the earth by an ancient civilization, known collectively as the Amazon geoglyphs. These structures consist of thousands of enormous circles, squares, and linear trenches carved into the land, some as wide as 300 meters across, located near the border with Bolivia. These geoglyphs date back between 1,000 and 2,000 years, long before the arrival of Europeans. The number and precision of these things shattered long-held assumptions that the Amazon was a pristine, untouched wilderness instead. These earthworks suggest the presence of a large, complex, and organized society. But what sets them apart is their invisibility. From the ground, most are impossible to recognize while walking through the rainforest, as the surrounding vegetation and uneven obscure terrain them only from above through satellite imagery, drone flights, or LiDAR. That's light detection and ranging. Do their shapes even emerge? Perfect circles aligned with precise 90-degree angles and repeating motifs that seem too intentional to be accidents. Their discovery has rewritten what we thought we knew about the ancient Amazon, long dismissed as the inhospitable to large-scale civilization. The region is now believed to have supported populations in the millions, living in planned settlements, sustained by engineered agriculture and water systems. But from above they look like shadows that have been etched into the earth, all perfectly scaled despite their age and erosion. In areas still covered by jungle, LiDAR scans penetrate through the canopy to expose these geometric scars. These shapes seem less like remnants of villages and more like mathematical statements that are carved into the earth, messages from a civilization that we're only beginning to understand. No. 5. The giant hands of the desert in Peru. Among the dozens of iconic shapes that make up Peru's Nazca lines, one of the most haunting is known as the disembodied hands. This geoglyph consists of two large palms, one with 5 fingers and one with only 4, stretching nearly 50 meters across the land, while overshadowed by more famous figures like the hummingbird and the spider. The hands remain one of the most enigmatic glyphs, baffling scholars and captivating the few who know where to look. Some scholars believe the hands represent a duality in Nazca cosmology, perhaps the right and left hands of deities, or the interplay between life and death, male and female, sun and moon. The missing finger could signify ritual sacrifice, deformity, or even a form of counting system. Others suggested symbolic of gesture-based communication, used in religious ceremonies to signal to sky gods. Despite any ongoing study, the Nazca lines remain one great mystery. And the hands are no exception. With no written language and few surviving cultural artifacts, researchers have to rely on pattern analysis, ethnographic parallels, and increasingly, satellite imaging to reconstruct the purpose of these huge drawings. The hands aren't visible from nearby trains, roads, or even low-altitude flights, but satellites do capture them with chilling clarity. Two perfectly proportioned appendages stretching across an otherwise barren canvas. The surrounding lines intersect in ways only visible from above, suggesting the entire region was designed to be read from the sky. It's like a script written not in words, but in shapes and silence. No. For the Fort of the Rings in Kazakhstan. In northern Kazakhstan, why is a geoglyph so strange and perfectly structured that it is stunned researchers when it was first spotted in 2007 through Google Earth? This geoglyph, now known as the Uzhejski Ring, or more commonly, the Fort of the Rings, consists of over 100 precisely placed mounds that form concentric circles. From above it looks like a giant, deliberate bullseye that was planted on the steppe. From the ground it's virtually invisible though. The rings are constructed of small earth mounds, about 3 feet tall and 40 feet across, arranged with precision in a circular pattern that spans roughly 900 feet in diameter. Some of the mounds stretch away like points or sighting markers, suggesting some alignment with solar or stellar events. But what makes it extraordinary is the complete lack of historical records or folklore associated with it. Local populations were unaware of its presence until it appeared online. Since then, teams of archaeologists and satellite analysts have studied it using high-altitude imaging, electromagnetic ground surveys, and topographical modeling. Still though, it remains silent. There is something chilling about it. Its perfection, the loneliness of it, its erasure from local memory. It feels like a construction project, and more like a celestial target, meant to be read from above, not walked on. The Fort of the Rings leaps from the steppe. Like a fingerprint stamped into the earth, the radial arms stretch out like pointers, or perhaps antennae, into the surrounding plains. Infrared and elevation data expose subsurface anomalies beneath several of the mounds, suggesting possible internal chambers or layers. But the overall impression is almost alien, a perfectly shaped beacon in a sea of emptiness, visible only to machines in the sky. No. 3. The wheel structures of Jordan. In the deserts of eastern Jordan, scattered across the plains of the Black Desert, lie hundreds of strange stone formations that archaeologists have dubbed wheels. From the ground, they resemble little more than random clusters of rock, but from above, and especially through satellite imagery, these wheels resolve into circular and radial designs. Some of them stretch up to 80 meters in diameter. This symmetry is unmistakable, even after thousands of years of exposure. Known locally as the works of the old men, these glyphs were unknown to modern archaeology, until pilots flying over the region in the early 20s began documenting them. The wheels vary in size, complexity and shape, and some are nearly perfect circles with evenly spaced spokes, while both theirs resemble dumbbells, kites or even snakes. Despite their name though, the wheels weren't intended to rotate. Instead, they may have served as burial markers, ceremonial spaces, or astronomical calendars. There's a mystery here, and it's compounded by the fact that the wheels are found in desolate, uninhabited areas, far from any known cities or settlements. They likely predate the rise of urban Mesopotamian civilizations dating back as 8,000 years. That challenges many assumptions about early nomadic cultures in the Levant, suggesting they engaged in large-scale construction projects with symbolic or spiritual intent. But today, archaeologists rely heavily on satellite scans and aerial drone imagery. Efforts are underway to catalogue and protect the most intact samples. From above, it's unmistakable. Spoked circular patterns etched into another wise chaotic landscape. The number of them, spread across thousands of square kilometers, suggest a cultural practice that was deeply embedded and possibly regional in scale. It's one of the clearest examples of ancient humans using the Earth itself as a canvas visible only to eyes far above. No, to the giant fish geoglyph in Kazakhstan. In the grassland of Kazakhstan, not far from in the famous Fort of the Rings, satellite imagery has revealed another geoglyph that defies expectations. A giant fish measuring nearly 300 meters in length, crafted from stone mounds, arranged in a sweeping formation. This geoglyph, discovered through high-resolution satellite scans in the late 20s, has no known historical reference or local legend associated with it. Researchers have since confirmed the presence of carefully placed earthen mounds and ditches used to shape the fish's body and define the contours. Now, what makes it mysterious is its isolation. There are no major rivers, lakes, or even reliable water sources nearby, raising the question of why an aquatic creature would be memorialized in such a dry, wind-swept location. Some scholars theorize it could represent a symbolic or spiritual metaphor, maybe tied to fertility or cosmic cycles. Others speculate that it may have served as a territorial or navigational marker, signaling a boundary or convergence point for nomadic tribes like the Fort of the Rings. This structure shows signs of intentional construction and planning, but from above, the fish appears as a fluid silhouette. The contours traced by the subtle topographical shifts and variations in vegetation elevation. Models show some stone densities matching the body structure, suggesting intentional mass distribution. Though invisible to those on the ground, to a satellite, it looks like a message swimming in space, a terrestrial glyph visible only from the stars. No. 1. The Nazca hummingbird. Among the countless wonders etched into the desert plateau of southern Peru, one figure stands out, not just for its beauty, but for its power to captivate imaginations. Across cultures, the Nazca hummingbird, stretching over 93 meters or 300 feet from beak to tail. This elegant geoglyph is a marvel of design, mathematics, astronomy, and mystery. Unlike other hummingbirds that dart and flit through the air, this one is motionless yet eternal, drawn with a single continuous line. It's part of the larger Nazca Lines complex, which spans more than 1,000 square kilometers of desert and features over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric shapes, and 70 distinct biomorphic figures. The hummingbird is among the most iconic of these, not only due to its elegance, but because of its flawless proportions. With the wings drawn in perfect symmetry, a slender curved beak and a tail flared like a fan, the hummingbird is both biologically accurate and stylistically abstract. Some researchers believe the Nazca Lines were part of ritual pathways, the people of the culture, which flourished between 200 BC and 600 CE. They have walked along these lines during ceremonial processions. Other scholars have looked deeper, literally by examining the orientation of various glyphs, including the hummingbird. Some believe they may have functioned as astronomical markers. And then there are more speculative theories. The notion that the Nazca Lines and the hummingbird in particular could be messages to the gods, or perhaps extraterrestrial visitors. While mainstream archaeology rejects these ideas due to lack of evidence, they have helped keep the hummingbird in the global consciousness, a symbol of both the ancient genius and unsolved mystery today. The hummingbird is more than just an ancient relic. It is a symbol of Peru, yet It's also one of the most vulnerable cultural treasures on the planet. In 2018, a truck driver accidentally veered off the Pan American Highway and drove directly across part of the hummingbird's wing, leaving tire tracks that cut into the ancient lines. Though restoration efforts were swift, the incident was a reminder of how fragile this legacy is from above. Its form emerges from the desert floor like a glyph of perfect balance. Each line is clean, sharp, and deeply etched, standing in contrast to the earth around it. What satellites see is not just a drawing, but a statement it's a void. It's written in the train, meant for watchers above, whether divine or distant. Its beauty, clarity, and message make it one of the most powerful human-made forms visible from above.